Hello and welcome to our third video on competitions. This is about running a public speaking competition. So, in this video I'm going to go through a format of public speaking competition that I designed and I've run a few times and I'm very fond of. This gives you a template if you want to just copy it entirely and run your own public speaking competition in the same way, go for it. But of course if you want to edit literally anything, all of it, ignore it, that's totally grand. After I give a template, I'll give some thoughts on why I designed it in certain ways and some things that I was considering and some principles behind the competition, so that hopefully the method behind my madness seems somewhat clear. I think it's probably fairly intuitively obvious, but why run a public speaking competition? Why not just do debating competitions? I think that they are different and that they focus on different skills. Of course, doing debating will improve your public speaking. Doing public speaking probably improves your debating, but they are different, especially as BP debating in the UK tends to ignore manner and style, even though I don't think it should, nor does the judging manual think it should, but it tends to in real life. And within this competition, along with just giving a speech, there is also rewards for being a good chair, being a good interviewer, and asking good questions, all of which I think are incredibly valuable skills that are under-practiced, not practiced, but under-practiced in most debating formats, especially BP. I also think this is a very fun format. I think that students are going to get a lot out of this. Not necessarily more or less than BP debating, it's designed to be fun, it's designed to be enjoyable. Not all students are going to want to do debating, it's quite combative. I also think that this format is deliberately designed to be more collaborative, more friendly. You're all giving your speech and you're comparing people, and yes, you are competing, but you don't ever have to undermine, disprove, or contradict anything anyone else says. Indeed, you shouldn't. So I think that leads to a nicer atmosphere, which I think fosters sort of more chat and friendships and stuff between different kids in different schools, which is just incredibly valuable. Especially as, I don't really want to get into this now, but I do think that university VP debating has become quite rude. Maybe it always has been, and I'm just more aware of it now as I get older. And I do think that has, as more and more university debaters get into coaching and judging, I think that has filtered down, and that the school's debating circuit has become needlessly unpleasant at times, and that judges aren't harsh enough in punishing students for being rude. But you know, that's probably for another day. But this competition was designed in part to reward collaboration and not reward rudeness. So how does it work? There are two rounds, and they break to a final. In the first round or the second round, you give a speech. It doesn't matter which, it's arbitrary. And in the round in which you are not giving your speech, you are a compere. A compere is someone who chairs and interviews someone giving their speech. So, in a given round, there's going to be 8 participants. 4 of them are going to be giving their speech, 4 of them are going to be comparing, and they're paired up. So when you see the draw will say, like, okay, room 1, there'll be these people speaking first, second, third, fourth, these people comparing first, second, third, fourth. You're not in a team, it's an individual event, so you're paired with a total random person. After the draw, you have 15 minutes to prepare. That means get to your room, find the person you've been paired with, like, oh, I'm Michael, I'm comparing second, I better find the person who's speaking second, I see their name's Natasha, I go to my room that I'm speaking in, be like, who's Natasha? Oh, you are, cool, what are you giving your speech on? I'm going to jot that down. Why do you choose this? Going to jot that down, chat to them for a few minutes, and then when it's our turn, I'll compare her speech. What does a compare do? So any pairing lasts 12 minutes. That allows for 30 seconds to a minute of introduction from the compare. Hi, this is Natasha. She's going to give a speech on Harry Potter. She chose this because, here she goes. Then Natasha gives a 5-minute speech. Then the compare would ask questions to the speaker for 2 or 3 minutes. Then they would take some audience questions for 2 or 3 minutes. And then they would do a sort of 30-second to a minute wrap up or conclusion before introducing the next compare. The interview style should be friendly. It should be a chance to drill down in some of the most interesting ideas that the speaker came up with, or to allow the speaker to talk more on certain things. It shouldn't be like a Jeremy Paxman trying to interview Jeremy Corbyn type interview where you're just being rude or talking over them or trying to like wrong foot them. That is not, in my versions of these competitions, that's not what I'm aiming for. In terms of who the audience are, it's just the 6 participants who aren't involved in that particular iteration. So it's the first pairing, then you've got the first speaker and the first compare, and the second, third, and fourth speakers and compares are the audience, and they are asking audience questions. The judge doesn't ask any audience questions. Indeed, the judge should only introduce the very first compare, and then shouldn't have to speak until everyone has spoken. How is it scored? So again, you could change this as much as you want. I've gone for the scorings that you see on the screen. A couple of reasons for that. I do value a good speech slightly more than a good compare, as you can see, because it is a public speaking competition. I've also chosen that the compare speaker points end in a 5 and the speaker points end in a 0 because that allows me to sort of double check when the scores are input that no one's made a mistake and sort of put the speaker scores in the wrong place, because you'll have each participant's name, their speaker score and their compare score. All their compare scores should end in 5, all their speaker scores should end in 0 unless it became dead last as a compare. I've also allowed judges to reward 5 points to the best audience question in any given room, in any given round, if they think there's a particularly good audience question. Sometimes that can be a little tiebreaker. That's nice. Quite importantly, this is ordinal scoring, right? The 50, 30, 20, 0 is you've come first, second, third, fourth as a speaker. The 35, 25, 15, 0 is you've come first, second, third, fourth as a compare. No one is being marked on a sort of objective scale of 0 to 10, 0 to 50, 0 to 100. They're being ranked. That is much, much easier for judges and allows you to use less qualified, less experienced judges, which is good because you're not normally going to have loads of really, really experienced professional judges, especially if it's a format that you or I invented. It is much, much easier to watch 4 speeches and pick the best one than it is to watch 4 speeches and give them all a ranking from 0 to 100 on a scale that someone handed you or emailed you in the last few weeks. This is a mistake that I see a lot when people invent their own formats in an Oracy competition. I was at a competition a few years ago. It was run by a teacher I know and who I like, but who just isn't that competent. And they got the teachers to be judges, which is totally fine. They can't provide your own judges, no big deal. But the judging criteria they sent the teachers involved like 4 pages of A4 explanation. And I just think that a judge who's doing this event for the first time, especially if they're a teacher, they're unpaid, they're sort of helping you out, they're probably not going to read all 4 of those pages, certainly not going to read it more than once. It's really hard to sit there listening to 4 speakers, 4 compares, with like a 4-page judging manual trying to figure out who scored what, especially if it's like out of 100. It's just really difficult, it's time consuming, mistakes are going to happen, and it's really stressful for the judges. Ranking is much, much easier. Yeah. Some considerations. I did not power pair. I do not power pair in this. I don't see a reason to. If you do, fair enough, but I don't see why there would be. You may want to change around the scores. You may want to value a good compare more than a good speaker. Great. Or value them equally. That's totally fine. If you value one thing more than the other, then wonderful. The number of people who make it to the final, again, totally up to you, right? You can either pick a points number. Anyone who scores like 70 points or higher gets in, or you can do it as a percentage, like the top 10% of speakers get in. That's typically what I've done. So I've had 5 finalists in all the iterations of this I've done, and I've always had between 45 and 60 participants. So it's roughly 10% of kids getting in. What that has meant is that to get into the final, when there's only 10% of kids getting in, you pretty much have to be the best compare and the best speaker, which is quite harsh. But I think a long final is not a great idea, especially if you want everyone to stay for the final and to decide the final on audience vote, which I do because it's public speaking. Also in the final, I don't have everyone compare and speak. I just have the 5 speakers give a speech. I have one person compare the whole final, and maybe one audience question per speaker in the final, so that the final doesn't last more than like 30 or 40 minutes. Again, I think an hour final is quite long. I do these on weeknight evenings, so I have limited time. Some broad principles here. I've said to the judges not to overthink the judging. So what I do is I have a 10 to 15 minute speaker briefing when all the kids are off prepping for round 1, and I just give judges some key things to focus on, and then broadly say to them, look, it's public speaking. Pick the speech that you enjoyed the most, that you wanted to listen to more of, that you were disappointed when it ended, and the kids that you didn't really enjoy listening to them, or you thought they were a bit monotonous or boring or didn't have any real thoughts, rank those low down. And with comparing, it's the same. Did it feel professional? Did it feel slick? Did it feel organized? Did it feel in control? Did they ask good questions? Then obviously that person did very well. If not, not so much. I usually give them a few key focuses, just to reassure them, but also because I think there are some common mistakes when judging public speaking. So a few things I might say to them is like, okay, if you think that the student is either reading out a fully written out speech, or is just essentially has memorized a speech word for word and is just like reading it out, and it could have been a speech that someone else wrote and they just memorized, I would score that very low. If it feels a bit more natural, authentic, engaging, that's going to score a lot higher for me personally. That's what I would choose to reward, and so that's what I ask my judges to reward. But again, it's your competition. Reward what you want. Maybe you want to reward more research, or you want to reward the funniest speeches. It's up to you. But whatever you are going to tell the judges to reward, tell the speakers that that's what you're rewarding in advance. It's only fair, right? Let the kids know how you're judging. Another thing I often talk about is bias. Just sort of mention to the judges that a lot of people do have biases when it comes to public speaking. People are more willing to believe that boys are funny than girls. People are more willing to believe that boys are more authoritative than girls. Try to compensate for that. Please make sure that if you're thinking, oh, they just sounded really professional, that doesn't mean they sounded posh or that they didn't have a regional accent, right? Like these are biases that we have. It's worth remembering. But beyond that, I don't give the judges a 4-page judging manual. I give them a few clear things to work on, and then remind them that it's just a ranking system and to trust their instincts. Because again, it's public speaking, so it should appeal to a member of the public. I like having audience votes to pick the winner of the final, because again, it's public speaking. And I like a fairly simple format, 2 rounds, just pairing after pairing, introduction, speech, questions, move on to the next one. I think the simplicity really works because, of course, this is an original format. People won't have done it before. People won't be familiar with it. So the simpler you can make it, the better. I have chosen to have the kids be the audience, asking the audience questions in every iteration and being given point rewards for the best audience questions, so that the kids are always doing something in every round. There's no dead time, so to speak. They are either speaking, comparing, or they are an audience member. I think that's really, really valuable because I don't want kids sitting around getting bored. And those are broadly what I considered when deciding this format. I hope this was useful. If you are planning on running a public speaking competition, consider this template. It worked really well for me. It might not work for you depending on how many kids you have, how long you have with them, etc. But maybe there'll be some good ideas in here. If you do decide to run a public speaking competition in or around this format with some alterations or some additions, I'd love to know how it goes. Please get in touch or comment. And if you have any questions or there's anything in this that you aren't sure about, please feel free to ask. The biggest thing I would say about this is just be clear in your own mind what you want to happen. Be very meticulous in explaining that to students and judges and teachers, and try to keep it as simple as possible, particularly the first time that you run it, when no one else will know what you're aiming for except you. But apart from that, it almost doesn't matter exactly how you do it, just that you know how you plan to do it, and that you clearly communicate that. Original formats, when they are thought through, can be very, very rewarding. and I absolutely loved running this format, and I've loved watching the speeches in this competition. In particular, I've been so impressed with the variety of speech topics that students have come up with when you give them free rein. We've had why autumn is the best season, the war in Afghanistan, perfectionism, the fashion choices in Bridgerton. We had a speech in the final recently by one of my own students just entitled The Potato. That was such a good speech. So yeah, that's definitely been a highlight for me in the last years running this event, and I hope that you have fun running something similar. And next time we'll look at another template for a different Oracy event, and hopefully that'll be useful as well. Thanks so much.